Following podcast is intended for an adult audience only. It contains strong language, strong accents, strong opinions, and themes of a sexual nature. So if you're under 18 or difficult to please, this isn't the podcast for you.
This is Varying Degrees, a BDSM podcast. I am your host, Cool Hands, and my co-host here with me this evening is Burns. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, actually. I was meaning to tell you, actually, as COVID restrictions are starting to be removed, I managed to get out to a little event recently, and that event was run by our guest, MissGold. Hello, MissGold. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Hi, both. Thanks for having me.
Thank you once again for joining us, MissGold. This is the first time we would have had a proper in-depth conversation or met properly, so I'm really looking forward to having you on this evening and learning a little bit about a subject that I'm not overly familiar with. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So, MissGold, I'll let you introduce the event as it's your event to introduce.
Yeah, you came along to our picnic, didn't you? It's the Femdom went south in the absence of us all being able to.
So this could just be my skewed perception of it, but when I look at forums online and maybe see seeking ads or people looking about how to find a partner, it tends to come across that male subs are a lot more centered around what they would like to do and what they would want in their ads. It tends to be a lot more focused on themselves, whereas I see more ads with female submissives don't tend to be weighted so heavily, rightly or wrongly. Don't see the language doesn't sort of seem to be catered towards more their own needs. It tends to be, you know, in terms of what they can do for their partner. Now, it could just be my perception, or it could also be that maybe some male submissives don't articulate themselves very well and are a lot more genuine than they would seem. And maybe if that is the case, I don't know, maybe you've got some suggestions of how male submissives entering the scene can come across not quite so disingenuous with their motives, perhaps, or with the language and their approach. I don't know. Do you ever... Maybe it's my perception. Maybe that isn't a problem at all.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I perhaps don't see so many of the female submissives ads, so I've not perhaps got that contrast. But in terms of it, I think some of it comes back down to what we were talking about in terms of the archetypes. And I think in terms of, you know, and we all have limits and we all have boundaries. Like it's completely okay for a person to say, I just want X, Y, and Z done. That's what I want. But I think the issue is when people perhaps aren't so honest and upfront about that, or perhaps or don't use the language about that. So I think there'd be some people that would kind of say I'm a slave, I'm this, that, and the other, but then kind of give a list of specific things that they want done to them, which is more around, which I think was what you were alluding to, and and it's more around that person's wanting their needs met or their kinks met. And that's okay if that person wants that done. But if that's what you want, just set your stall out and be honest about that and kind of say, actually, I'm not a slave, I'm not a submissive, maybe I'm a bottom, and for a couple of hours, I want some play with someone who equally likes doing the same thing as me. And there's nothing wrong with that at all, and I just think people aren't straight about that. And I think what happens is you will get guys that go on there so in the past, I used to, because I can be quite service orientated in some ways, and I've advertised before for service submissives to come and do tasks for me, so painting and decorating or whatever. And the responses I would get back, you'd get so many people responses back, and it's a lot of admin to go through, and you'd get a lot of guys that would be like, well, I'll come and paint your room, and then you get, well, can I wear stockings? Can you spank me? Can you do this? And can you do that? And it's like, I've clearly said in my advert, I want a service submissive to come and do something for me. I'm not offering you anything. That's not part of the deal. So what you're talking about definitely does happen. But there's also a lot of people out there who are quite genuine about what they're asking for, and about what they want, and what they're expecting back in that. But I don't think there's anything wrong if a guy or a girl, but if a submissive, what they want, what their needs are, is to meet up with play for someone and have an exchange of a certain thing. I think that's okay, but it's about when that's wrapped up in a dialogue around, I'm a slave, I'm a submissive, I want to do X, Y, Z for you and to you, and their motivations. That's very subcentric. It's not very, it's about them and it's about their needs.
Would you say, and this might be quite difficult to answer, it might be very easy to answer, but would you say that this is in some part linked to how men and women are socialised differently, in that men tend to be socialised to, I go and get this, I do this, whereas women are more socialised to, you are the person who is there to please a person, or, to do things for people, whereas the man goes out and does the doing. I'm not saying that's right or whatever, but I'm just saying traditionally those are like the roles that people kind of gravitate to, or are at least told about, if you like.
I don't know. I think if you take kink out of it, and if you take femdom out of it, you will see men are a lot more comfortable. If one went to a spa or a swinging event or whatever, you see men are a lot more comfortable in that environment, or you will see a lot more men in that environment just going there purely to get their needs met, and that's completely okay. I've been to many swinging events and spas, I'm somebody that's would class myself as quite liberated, but I think if you take femdom and kink out of it, you tend to see men in terms of getting their sexual needs met. You have many men there, and you might only have a few women, and I just think it filters back, to my mind, in some ways. I think it filters back down to that. So I think there's a difference to someone that's on Fetlife, who's wanting to submit, in terms of psychologically submit and be involved in a kind of female-led relationship, or be involved in power exchange, to somebody who wants to meet up for play and have kinky sex. I think those two things are very different things, and I think they get clumped together.
So just moving on slightly from those questions, what would you say, and we might have touched on this already, what would you say are the most common frustrations for DOMs?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of messages, and there's not, that come through. You get so it's not being treated like a person, just being treated, the messages that come through, and they're not even hi, hello, there's nothing. It's just like offers of service or offers of sex or whatever, so it's yeah, I think that's a big thing, being treated, being objectified and treated like somebody that's to meet their sexual needs, rather than a person, just a message that's a nice, polite message. The same type of message that you might send somebody in the vanilla world is far more appreciated than a hey babe or hey mistress,
So kind of like they've clearly not read your profile or anything.
Well, so that, in terms of, that was going to be one of my next things, is about, lots of people will very clearly say on their profile about how to message, how to respond, their likes and their dislikes, whether they're even open to messages. So yes, so not taking the time, if someone can't take the time to read your profile, how are they ever going to take the time to engage in a meaningful relationship in any way? And I think for me, and again we've touched on it, is about this, people misrepresenting themselves.
the really shitty thing is, though, that we know from talking to friends and from your experience and talking to friends that this isn't something that female doms experience. This is something that all women experience on sites like this, because submissives and any other woman labeling or identifying as any role gets hordes and hordes of messages to filter through of people being demanding or inappropriate or not approaching them as they would in the vanilla world. So like we know that this is a, well, I say it's a it's a men's problem. It's a problem with us. I mean, hopefully not me personally, but it's a problem with the male gender, isn't it, rather than male submissives?
Yeah, I would, yeah, I think I'd be inclined to agree with that to a certain extent. And I think also, I think, you know, within that, there's lots of amazing people out there as well. And that's the, you know, there's lots of, but yeah, you have to get through quite a lot. This is why Munches is the best thing to go to. Just get out there and see people, meet people in the real world and go to Munches. And then you get a feel for people. But yes, one of the, in terms of things that are annoying or that it's about people misrepresenting themselves. And by that, what I mean is one of the common things, because engaging in a dynamic or a relationship with somebody, now whether that's a 24, you know, whether you're living with someone or maybe having a play partner or dating or being a key holder. We've not really spoken about chastity and that side of things, but in terms of the investment from the dom, in terms of the emotional labour load that comes with that, you know, it's a huge investment. And I think one of the frustrations is that we will get approached by someone and chat to someone and start something and invest quite a lot of an emotional energy in that process, whether it's being a key holder or having, you know, a relationship. And then, you know, and someone presenting as a submissive and they want all these different things. But then when it comes to it, perhaps or very soon after they've had a first play session or something like that, they disengage. So it's about this, like I said earlier, it's about, you know, it's okay if someone's interest in it is more around the kink side and the bedroom side, that's completely okay. But own that. You know, don't kind of say that you're a service submissive and you want X, Y, and Z if that's not you, because that's not everyone. And that's a big commitment to make. And so it's about that misrepresentation. And I know lots of women will talk about that they think they've met someone that they can form, you know, a really intense connection with and have longevity with and all the things this person said that they were and wanted quite quickly it becomes evident that that wasn't the case.
I think this is probably where a lot of people will use the phrases fake dom or fake sub, which I feel is almost quite a glib way of saying what you've said, really. You know, you've put it in a much clearer manner of this person is misrepresenting what they want, either intentionally or not, but that they're misrepresenting it. And I think that's perhaps why people have been using those terms so much recently, because it's maybe not entirely accurate, but it more or less gets across the heart of what's going on.
And I think you know, I think there's lots of different types of subs, and there's lots of different types of, you know, there's lots of different ways people can be a dominant, and there's lots of different types of subs, and I think it's, but I think, you know, that takes time. I think for many people as well, they don't know. Like I think for many, especially the newer submissive men that come on the scene, that, you know, they don't know perhaps that, and it's about that education and that research and spending time and that self-awareness as well, and those things take time. Absolutely. One more thing, what advice, if any, would you give to aspiring lifestyle doms? What advice? Sound like a broken record, but go to Munches. Just because I think, you know, if someone's kind of newer onto the scene, I think it's really good to reach out, find a mentor. There's lots of amazing people out there that would happily mentor and support newer people onto the scene. Yeah, so I would definitely recommend that. I would recommend joining some of the groups that are on Fetlife. I would recommend reading some books. Rika is quite a good book to read for someone that's kind of interested in a more female-led relationship side of things. But there's loads of other great resources. But yeah, reach out, talk to people, connect. Yeah, and find some like-minded, find some other DOMs that are like-minded to you, because like we said, you know, there's lots of different ways to do this. So and not be put off, because I think sometimes there can be, you know, it can be easy to think, oh, but if I don't like doing X, Y, and Z, or if I don't like this, then am I really on the right path? But I guess the thing about it is about, yeah, you do what you want to do, and you do it in the way you want to do it, as long as it's safe, consensual, and all those things. So that, yeah, and don't jump in too quickly with submissives as well. Take your time with them. Take your time to find the right people and have fun.
What advice would you give submissives then, new submissives, if that's for DOMs? You know, what would you say to new submissives, men who maybe don't have any connections in the scene and don't know what's expected of them when they step onto the scene and try and put themselves across?
Yeah, again, go, you know, meet people in person, go to munches. Some amazing women I know run a group called House of Command on Fetlife, which is part of that is about supporting new submissives to kind of understand about the lifestyle, and they've got resources on there about what to expect at your first event, what to expect at your first munch, how to send a message, how to approach people. Yeah, so yeah, just educate yourself. And find a mentor, reach out to other people that have been around in the scene for a while, and don't be, and again, things like the archetypes are really interesting and quite important. You know, just because you're, I think it's very easy for some people to think, well, I need to behave in this way. And I've met new submissives to the scene or not so new submissives to the scene that have been like, but I don't like impact play. I don't like pain. You know, no one's going to want to play with me because I don't like these things. But what I really want to do is just serve someone. And it's like, and it's just about trying, you know, for me, that's amazing to have someone that's completely, all they want to do is serve their dom. They're not interested in, you know, in being played with it in that way. So I think it's about breaking down some of those preconceived ideas about what being a dom or what being a submissive looks like. To have normal munches, hopefully soon. We've hosted a couple of picnics over the summer, which have been lovely. It's been really lovely to kind of see people in the flesh again, rather than chatting to everyone virtually over a computer screen. So we had, I think it was about 25 people that came along to the last munch. We had many faces there of people that have come to, you know, be good friends, I guess, from the community over time. But there was also quite a few new faces of people that came. And some of the people who were there, it was their first event, their first ever event. So their first post-COVID event and their first ever time attending a munch. And, you know, they'd come quite a long way as well. For the Femdom munch itself, most of the people that come to the munch are from outside of Reading, actually. But one particular guy there, he was so nervous about coming in. He was there with his bike, and he lived down by the coast, and so he cycled to the train station. He got 2 trains, and then cycled to come and meet us. Yeah, and it's just brilliant. And I think that's just a testament to the Femdom munch, everyone who attends it, and how welcoming and supportive they are. We've got an events page on Fetlife as well, so quite frequently people will message beforehand if they're feeling a bit anxious or a bit worried about coming, and they're arranged to meet people sometimes beforehand or exchange a few messages. So hopefully that helps people feel a bit more comfortable about coming as well. But it was lovely, and there's lots of cake, and you brought
so
some
much
cake.
Yeah, it's spiced brownie, I believe it was. There's some excellent lemon tart as well.
there's lemon meringue pie, lemon tart, there was your brownie, and then we had some lovely cupcakes. We had some biscuits, some sausage rolls, all homemade. I was very impressed. It's a long time since I've eaten quite so much baked goods in an afternoon. It was brilliant, but it's lovely. And it's just that sense of community that with the munch as well. And it's always been like that. Yeah, it's really lovely. It's lovely. We're looking forward to more kind of in-person meetings, coming forward really. I guess so from very soon where we'll be able to meet in larger groups inside. I know there's some events that are starting up soon over the summer. We've got another event the next month that we're doing. Very excited about it. It's going to be a slightly different format. It's going to be like a play munch. So it's going to be a cross between a social, but we're holding it in a kink venue. So we're going to have the first couple of hours, which will just be like a normal munch where people can come and chat and meet, and then after that, if people want to stay on and use some of the private rooms and use some of the equipment, they can, which is quite a unique thing for munch really, to be able to do that. So we're really excited about that. That's at the beginning of August actually, and also because it's in a kink venue, people get dressed up. Like Femdom's amazing for getting dressed up, whether you're whatever side of the coin you're on. I love getting dressed up. Can't really rock up into your pub in town in your fetish gear. So that would be a nice element to have that at a munch as well.
I do like a play munch because there was a localish small venue that used to do play munches pre-COVID, and I went a couple of times and I like it. It's not quite as full on as a full dungeon or night event. It's a little bit more relaxed and sort of, for me, it's a little bit more, I don't know if it's just 'cause it's in the middle of a day or, an afternoon and that, but it just felt a little bit more like a relaxed, light-hearted play event. That munch aspect kind of made it a bit more that direction for me. Obviously, other events are going to be different, and other people are going to have different opinions on what an event felt like. But yeah, no, that's what I like about them.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think some of the some of the other events can feel, especially for newer people, if you're going by yourself, they can feel a bit, or people report they can feel a bit intimidating and a bit, a little bit anxious about going. Whereas I think you're right. I think a play munch kind of bridges the gap between the two of them. But some of the questions I've been getting actually from people is about, but I don't want to play. So yes, just because it's a play munch, people don't have to. I think some newer people feeling a bit anxious about the expectation of going somewhere and having to get involved in play. But obviously no one, people don't have to do that. But yeah, so that's really exciting to I'm very much looking forward to events starting again. So I'm sure everyone is really, or most people are.
Yeah, we're just having the in-person events slowly either starting or the planning of what will happen in this area. We had a picnic munch that I organised recently in line with COVID restrictions, and that was just great to see some people that I've grown to consider good friends over the last sort of 5 years, but actually haven't seen in person for over a year now.
And a couple of new faces, you were telling me.
A new face and faces new to me, but not entirely, if that makes any sense at all.
No, it does. We can get back to events in a more. But MissGold, could you tell us a wee bit more about yourself? How you first found the scene, how you first got involved in female-led relationships?
Yeah, so I first found the scene, I was introduced to the scene by a play partner that I kind of met through other avenues about 5-6 years ago, and that was kind of how I first met Fetlife in terms of that scene. I think I've always classed myself as someone who's liberated, shall we say, in terms of some of my lifestyle choices over the years. And I remember at school, I remember fancying this boy at school, and my way of showing him that I liked him was to try and beat him up, get in a fight with him and wrestle him to the floor. So apparently not everyone does that, but who knew at that age? But so I think there's always been an element of kind of that within me, and I think I look at my earlier relationships, they were very much female-led, didn't perhaps have the same level of kink side of things in them. Yes, so it's always been there. But yeah, more recent years when I've kind of found Fetlife in the scene, and then a few years ago kind of started hosting the Femdom Munch South, and currently living with my partner, my submissive and my partner. So we currently live together. So we're 24/7 living together, but not, and we do have, you know, a female, and I think that, you know, I think the terms female-led relationship, DS, people kind of use, and kink, you know, people change and use those terms, but I think they can mean very different things. And you can't, you know, some people do have female-led relationships that don't have any kink involved in them at all. And some people, you know, perhaps a DS relationship isn't the same necessarily as a female-led relationship. I would say ours is female-led and more so than DS. You know, and you have some people, for them, that their kink is in the bedroom only, and outside of the bedroom everything's, you know, 50-50 and completely, you know, vanilla. So but yeah, so I would say where I'm probably on that spectrum in the middle, I guess. I'm not one for, I couldn't handle having loads of really strict firm rules. I think that would be too much for me in terms of having to manage that, to be fair. But I know for other people that's their thing, and you know, and they really thrive off that. So I guess the important thing is that we just find our place, and we will do what's comfortable for us and what works for us.
So it's very interesting. It leads on in a way to something you mentioned when we were at the picnic. You were talking about variety in femdom and female-led relationships, and you mentioned DS archetypes. Would you care to mention something about that for our listeners?
Yeah, I think the archetypes is a really interesting thing. We've it's one of the, I have to dig out the name of the group, but one of the groups on Fetlife has posted a kind of link to this, and they've got there's more submissive archetypes listed there actually than there are dominant archetypes, but they kind of just break them down, and I guess many of us would probably straddle more than one, but they kind of just break them down. So I guess, for an example, you might have somebody who's very, you know, authoritarian, and for them they very much like that structure, and they like the DS side of things in terms of having rules and consequences. And you might have someone on the other end of the spectrum that's very much more nurturing, so they might identify as more of a mummy or nurture side of things. Amazon archetype is another one, and she's quite I think she likes to throw the chase. She likes to go and hunt and find her submissive and capture him and wrestle him. She's very much into the community as well. And you might have some people identify more as a goddess. The goddess perhaps wants to sit there and be served and be worshipped. But yeah, so I think it's really important for people to perhaps identify who they are and what their needs are within that, and then that helps one find the right partner with that as well. So, you know, lots of submissives will, I think, when they're newer, perhaps identify as a slave or a submissive, and I think it's really interesting to, you know, some people, some submissives, they want to have every decision made for them. You know, they want to be told every last thing, whereas other submissives don't want to do that at all. You know, they want the autonomy to kind of make decisions and do what they want. And some people are very service orientated, and, you know, and get true pleasure from doing things for their dominant and serving them. That's where they get their pleasure. Other people are more, you know, they more need rewards. And, you know, and there's no right or wrong. It's just about people figuring out who they are. But yeah, definitely recommend anybody who's in the scene to have a read of the archetypes. We've done it at the munches before sometimes, actually. We've printed them off at the munches and kind of given them to people to read, which has always been quite interesting.
You mentioned hunting. Would that be would that be related in any way to an event called the Cruel Huntress by any means?
Hunting, the Cruel Huntress. I love the Cruel Huntress. So the Cruel Huntress is and if I was to put myself down as some of the archetypes, some people have I kind of straddle maybe the Amazon and the nurturer would be where I would sit, I think, in them. And yes, the Cruel Huntress it's an event that's run by some amazing women from London way. And they've been running it for many, many years actually, but I think it's and it's not a huge event. I think it's probably limited to about 25 women, I think. And submissives, and basically it's in a secret location, and the guys are given, or the submissives, because there's female submissives as well, are given a head shield and a jock strap, and they're sent off into the woods, and then we go after them with our paintball guns, and we capture them and shoot them, or shoot them and capture them, and then torment them. But it's all very it's all done very safely. The day is structured into games. The first game is normally about 40 minutes, and the submissives, they have a tag around their neck which has their limits on there, so and we have a safety brief then, and we have to make sure we're obviously not getting too close to them. Everyone's got head shields on and stuff. But yeah, it's great fun. We go, we shoot them, capture them, and then we can play with them, or make them roll in stinging nettles, or do whatever, make them lick our boots or whatever we so wish, within their limits, and then set them free, and then they kind of go off, and then we move on to the next person, and then everyone kind of comes together, and we have a break in between, and then they have other games, and we've had Space Invader games and other hunting games. It's brilliant. It's one of the best events. There's such a community there. People go back year after year, and they do winter parties, and it's just this. Yeah, it's just this big family that kind of evolves and grows from it as well. I've met some amazing people through attending their events, and it's an event that lots of people want to attend to. It sells out quickly.
With regards to community events and such, it sounds like there's some really fun play events, and that aspect within the Femdom community. But for people that are maybe exploring female-led relationships, what other reasons do you think there are for them potentially wanting to get involved with their local community other than sort of play events? Because some people might look to get involved with the community, but their play aspect and that aspect of it may only be something they want to engage in at home. So what else is there? Do you know what I mean? What else do people get from the community? What else is there?
What else do people get from the community?
Yeah, well, if a couple were exploring female-led relationships, so why might they want to start exploring events?
Munches, it's just a great way to connect with people and like-minded people, and get support and ideas, and because some of the things that we want to do and do to our partners, many people would not think are normal. and sometimes I think it's just good to connect with like-minded people, and talk through these things, and develop friendships.
I suppose you've got the aspect of it that you could have, you're bound to, just like when people start exploring any aspect of themselves, it could turn out that they discover stuff about themselves that is counter to the way they've been raised. And there are many people in many sort of different parts of the country and the world, and different types of local communities, where they're still raised in a very male-led, traditional, patriarchal, and it might be weird for some people wanting to explore either a submissive role due to how they were raised, or women thinking, wanting to maybe explore a female-led relationship depending on how they were raised in their community and culture.
Yeah, I guess I think my observations are, I think the submissive man finds that journey more challenging. In terms of, when I see newer people coming to munches and events, newer women tend to reach out a lot more to other women, and they might want to say hello, and someone say hello when they get there, but they're quite comfortable in that, whereas I tend to find with the submissive men that they can find that, and they can be a little bit more, I don't want to come, someone might see me, what if people find out about it, and all that type of things, whereas I don't tend to get that quite so much from the female side of things. But even there's the femdom side of things, but even just in terms of kink and some of the things what we know, it's not if I was to talk to my vanilla friends about leaving my partner locked in a cage all night, they I've been calling the police. Whereas, to be able to sit with other people and just talk about that and that be a normal thing and get tips on how to, do things better or whatever, I just think. And it's just like you're saying, sometimes, just to have other people around, because sometimes you get those moments and you're just like, oh my God, like, I can't believe I just did that. So it is good. And, and I guess also coming to, you just meet other people, and there's a lot, you've got the events that are advertised that everyone knows about, but within the community, there's lots of private, like dinner parties or tea party, you tend to get groups of friends like you do in any community. I guess you get groups of friends that develop and you get lots of like fun things that happen. So it's, it's good to connect and meet people for that as well.
So you've mentioned previously that you've been involved to some degree with CFNM events, and for those listeners that don't know, those are clothed female, naked male events. Would those be similar to the kind of the tea parties and things that you've just mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, they're brilliant. So we've had a couple of dinner parties, and the premise of the ones that I've hosted have been around Dom's dinners. So it's been a group of my friends together, and it's been about us having a lovely evening, and we've been served by the male submissives. They'd all be naked, or they might have a pinny on. And
I was going to ask, pardon the interruption, I was just going to ask, are they allowed to wear an apron while they're doing the cooking?
Well, sometimes that's preferable for them to wear to wear an apron when doing the cooking, but they wear what we've done different themes at different things, but so for all intents and purposes they're naked and they just serve us, and then we either have a bell, or my favorite thing is I have a dog collar, electric shock collar, which goes around the testicles, so that's quite a good way to get someone's attention. It vibrates as well, so we're not always shocking people, but so we have when we want something, we will summons them. We just get served foot massages, food, drink. The expectation is they're attentive to our needs and make sure that we're all looked after. And after dinner entertainment is very important as well. We tend to have different themes, or we had one that was a Olympic theme. So we had the submissives doing, they were in competition with each other. So we had weightlifting one time where the guys they attach parachutes to their testicles. So it's this band that goes round above the balls with loops that hang down and hang heavy weights on. So they were having a weightlifting competition to see who could hang the heaviest weight off the balls, or tug of war competitions where they had nipple clamps on and they had to on two of them to see who was the strongest with the tug of war and the nipple clamps. So just fun things. They're just fun evenings where we're served by and entertained by the naked guys.
I think in my experience, private kink evenings tend to be a lot more light-hearted and fun than an outsider looking in might assume they are. They tend to be, in my experience, quite fun, light-hearted evenings, kinky evenings all round with friends. Where I suppose people who don't know anything about it would assume that it's sort of quite serious and seedy, and if there's power exchange involved, it's all very serious. But that, in my limited experience so far, is seldom the case.
Yeah, I think maybe what the outside world perceive goes on in a femdom relationship is probably quite different to kind of what happens day to day, because it's just life happens, doesn't it? It's like in the majority of the time. So even though I guess for me the bottom line is, if I want something, I expect it's within reason. I expect, if I want a cup of tea, I expect to have my cup of tea. But most of the time, if anyone was to look in, it's just a normal relationship. It's just that maybe the distribution of tasks might be more lean towards my partner doing them than me, or it's more that I choose when I want to do them. I would do as much cooking as he, but I just choose when I want to do it and delegate when I don't, I guess. But most of the time it's pretty normal. It's just fun. It's just, you know.
Personally, I say authority-led relationships, and that's why I'm choosing my words quite carefully, is because I think my view on them has changed over the year, because I used to refer to them as power exchange relationships, but within my dynamics, I don't see myself as having any more or less power. And power exchange is a fine term for those that use it, and it is a good term, it's a grand term, it's a common one, but it's more authority transfer, authority led, as opposed to sort of having power. And, you know, like you were saying, it's not that necessarily that you do less, but you choose what and what, you get to choose what and when. And I think for any relationship to be successful, people probably need to contribute equally in some measure, don't they?
Yeah, I guess it depends. I guess it, you know, it just depends what that equal looks like.
Yeah.
And equal isn't, I guess equal's not about both parties doing 50% of the share. Yeah, equal for me is about people's needs being equally met. But how needs are met, especially, you know, within DS and kink, it's very complex. So it's not about people doing 50% of the housework. It's just about their needs being met around that. And it might be for one couple what meets their needs. You know, I know people who identify slaves, and they, you know, and then you know, a really good couple friend of ours that you know, the partner, I suspect he does all the housework and all the cooking and everything, and that his needs are equally being met through that process as hers are having it done. So it's yeah. I think that's very, for me, that's a really important distinction between the about the actual doing and the needs.
So, bit of an interesting question. How do you feel we could do better with educating people regarding protocol and associated etiquette, and whose responsibility is that, really?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a big fan of personal responsibility at most things in life, to be fair. You know, if I was, you know, I'm really into my cycling and racing. So if I'm taking up a new sport or a new activity, it's my responsibility to research that to keep myself safe. You know, so I think in terms of people coming into the scene, you know, there's a responsibility there for that person to do what they need to do to keep themselves safe within that. In terms of etiquette and protocol, you know, I'd expect somebody to do the same around that. However, within that, in any community group or workplace or whatever, you know, you see the more experienced or the older people kind of sharing their knowledge and handing down, you know, that information. So I think, you know, ultimately it's personal responsibility to kind of seek out things and reach out to people and ask questions and read things. And then, but equally for people who have that knowledge and experience to kind of, yeah, to share that and point people in the right directions. So I think it's both, but ultimately for me it's about personal responsibility. Yeah, and in terms of how we can do better and where to go, yeah, there's some, you know, I was saying earlier at the munch that the last picnic munch, there was at least 3 people there where it's their first event and their first munch, you know, and I think it was a couple of them beforehand, they sent me messages and we've been chatting, and then since then, you know, one of them sent me messages and was asking questions about it. And so I think, you know, the good, you know, the people within the community that are good people will seek out that information and they will conduct themselves in an appropriate way. Or if they do something that perhaps somebody is offended by, you know, they listen and they take on board that. But there are a lot of good resources on both Fetlife and the internet that people can access.
So I think it's very interesting that you make that point, and thank you for making it, because I think one of the common complaints is maybe something we'll talk about a little bit later, but one of the common complaints you tend to see for people is getting a message saying like, oh, I'm really keen to learn and all this, when what they're trying to do is just get into somebody's pants, for want of a better phrase, you know. It's just like, right, you could teach me, you could be, and it's like, well no, like do a bit of the research yourself and maybe come along to some events rather than just kind of zooming in on one person, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you get a lot of messages. There's a lot of traffic on Fetlife.
So, MissGold, you'd mentioned a group on Fetlife. I believe it was submissive men and women who love them. And you said that the link to the DS Archetypes was on there somewhere.
Yeah, it is. It's in there underneath one of the stickies in there. There's lots of good information in there. It just talks about Femdom, different types of Femdom, lots of good discussions that are really beneficial to newer people joining the scene as well. But yeah, there's a sticky in there that talks about the archetypes, which I've shared many a times with many people, and I think it's always generated some really good discussions. And I think many people have found it quite helpful in terms of help them navigate their way through their journey through Femdom, actually.
I think I had a quick wee look on the Fetlife group earlier, and I believe that there was discussions on there, posts going back about 13 years. So it sounds like that group has a wealth of information for the beginner and perhaps even some useful reference points for people a bit more experienced in the scene.
Yeah, definitely. There's lots of really good discussions that come up in there, and you see newer people and people that have been around in the scene sharing their knowledge. One of the things that commonly comes up, or questions that get asked in Femdom groups that I see, is around kind of certain acts and whether a Dom can do a certain act. And I think the thing that it will come back to quite a lot within the Femdom is it's the intent behind the act, not the act itself. But it's really interesting to kind of read some of the discussions that go on around some of those topics.
And no act unto itself is inherently submissive, is it? It's down to context, I think, in every occasion, and who is desiring who to do it and who is choosing to do it.
Yeah, it's about exactly that. It's about the intent behind the act. So I think some conversations that may be new or perceived to be newer people or females would talk about would be given blowjobs, for example. And so you will see it come up, and some people will struggle with it, and they kind of say, well, if I'm a Dom, how can I do that? And then there'll be a whole load of other women that will be in support of, but if you want to do it, you do it. The whole idea, in Femdom is about that the woman's empowered to do what she wants and get her needs met. And if one wants to do that to their partner, then go ahead and do it. But it's really interesting, and it's really supportive. I mean, there's many supportive groups on Fetlife, but it is a really supportive group.
So Fetlife has got loads of resources on there and lots of different people's lived experiences, but there are some people that might not use it. Have you got any reading recommendations or any other sort of resources that you could that have helped you on your journey for it?
Yeah, I think one that's quite common amongst the Femdom scene is Uniquely Rika by MS Rika. Some people love it, some people hate it. It's very much around a female-led relationship. This was her first book, Uniquely Rika, and it's a really simple book. It really breaks it down. It talks about having a female-led relationship developed on top of a base relationship. So it talks about a premise of a loving relationship between two consenting adults, and all those healthy things that need to be there for a positive relationship are already there. And it talks about developing a female-led relationship as a layer on top of that. And she very much talks about it's about the intent as well. And she talks about the difference between sub-centric and dom-centric behaviors. She kind of breaks it down and again, it is very service orientated, but she talks around, if somebody is truly a service orientated submissive, then they will get a lot of their pleasure and their reward from serving and doing things for their mistress. Some mistresses like to have a submissive who anticipates their need and will kind of go around tasks and do tasks without being asked. Another mistress might be someone that's a lot more likes to dictate specifically every last detail of what they want done. But she talks about, it's submissive's kind of job, so to speak, to kind of learn and understand, their mistress and how they like that. And she talks about the importance, she uses the words gifts in terms of play and her doing nice things and doing things to or for her partner, but she talks about them in gifts rather than rewards, which comes back down to, the submissive should serve, in her opinion, because they want to, and they get their reward is the joy that they get, not doing it because they're going to get play at the end, and equally not doing it to be punished. She's not somebody that believes in that you should have to heavily punish and cane or whatever, whatever your choice is for your partner. Again, it's like your submissive partner's an adult. They make a choice to be in a female-led relationship, and they should conduct themselves accordingly. But another book that lots of people talk about is Renee Lane's, which is Finding Love Through Female Domination. And she's the other end of the spectrum. She's fierce. She believes in corporal punishment. She has Wednesday night caning sessions just to remind him of his place. Sunday was very much around infractions. So she would keep a record throughout the week of all the things that he didn't do right, and then there would be infractions on a Sunday. So they're two very different examples of how one might choose to set up a female-led relationship. And I think Renee Lane's book is more, it's written in journal entries between her and her butler, and it's more written as a novel that you're reading it, whereas Uniquely Rika is more as a book that's kind of advising you and telling you how to do something. But they're both good reads. Recommend them both. And they've both these have groups on Fetlife as well. But yeah, they're definitely good reads. But there's lots of good books out there, but they're definitely the two that crop up the most, I think, amongst people.
So there's a couple of things I kind of take away from that. Is one is that it's very much not one size fits all, which I think is something you said.
And I find it really interesting spending time with my friends, and I'm very fortunate to have a close circle of friends that are within the lifestyle. And when we get together and have our ladies' tea parties, or just we have WhatsApp groups together, we are all completely different. Our expectations of how we expect our partners to behave are all completely different. How we want to be served are all completely different. And there's no right or wrong. And I think you can get some people, I think, I said previously about if somebody's interest in Femdom is for a couple of hours once a month for a play session, that's okay. And if someone's interested in Femdom is 24/7 high protocol relationship, that's okay. And it's not about being better or worse. It's just different. And it's just about, people finding their own way within that really. I think also I said earlier, it's about people being honest about that though, being honest about, what their needs are within that and where they fit.
I think your comments about honesty there really are very important, and highlight the need to communicate and to make sure that what you're asking for in a relationship and what the other person's needs are is what is actually there, and not something based on a false impression of you kind of second guessing what their motives might be or what they're trying to say, rather than just bulldoze them and say, right, this is what I've decided you're saying, or this is what I've decided you want. You make sure that you actually find out what it actually is that they want and go from there.
Yeah, communication's key, isn't it? I mean, it's key anyway, but it's definitely, it's even more key within the BDSM lifestyle. And I think, sometimes we don't know. I guess we don't know until we try things. I think sometimes we can be so, I remember a time when I was perhaps had this idea about how I wanted my 24/7 lifestyle to be, and you go down that road and sometimes as a dom it's like, God, that's quite exhausting actually. I don't, you think one may think they want things a bit more structured or to have more protocol, but it's, sometimes you do have to try things to realise they're perhaps not right for you. But yeah, it's about that, I guess, as you go on that journey, it's about that open communication with your partner. And there's always a compromise when in any relationship, there's always a compromise of sorts, but it's about being a healthy compromise, I guess. And I think I said before, and for me, it's about, regardless of any power exchange or what dynamic people are in, it's important that people's needs are met equally. So their wants might not be met equally, and if there's a power exchange there as well, but within that, people's needs should be met equally. The person who's maybe given up the power, that's their needs are being met through that process in the same way, in an equal way. It changes and it shifts and moves slightly. It's not always 50-50 equal, but in an equal way as the person taking the power. So for me, the needs being met is fundamental, but the wants aren't always so clear cut.
Do you guys have, you're saying about protocols, making me think, what level of protocol do you have sort of around the home? For instance, is there protocol around sitting down for dinner, or who eats first, him being able to go to like the restroom, for example, or anything?
No, so we have rituals. We have a nighttime ritual that we do, and then we have chastity. But chastity for me isn't about someone being locked up 24/7, because I don't think that's healthy. I don't think that's physically healthy. And people need to, he likes playing football. And also, I like playing with cocks. If it's locked up all the time, I can't always get to it. So, but we have chastity in terms of I have that control. I say when it's locked up and when it's not, and he's not allowed to come without my permission. So we have those type of things. We have tried other things in terms of asking permission to eat. I don't really, or things like if he wants to play a computer game, perhaps he'd ask permission for that, for those type of things. But the general underlying element is if I ask for something, if I ask for a bath to be run, or if I ask for my shirt to be ironed, then it gets done. That's the basic underlying thread that runs through, rather than it being any more kind of structured routines throughout the day. I don't have the headspace for it personally. I know for other people that might work for them. And I think you find people that have more routines, they've probably been together quite a long time and built them up over time as well.
Yeah, no, I would agree. We didn't. I've got a one of my dynamics has sort of a medium amount of protocol, and we didn't just, it wasn't that from day one. It kind of filtered in over time, and to the point, and in a way where it was never stuff that had to be, it was arduous to remember. It was just easy to do because it was just a natural progression. But like you're saying, there is no one size fits all, and some people would find to be hard work, others find relaxing, and what some people would find relaxing, others would find to be hard work.
It depends what else you've got going on in your life, right?
So, bit of an awkward question. Hope this doesn't come across as disrespectful in any way. But is there anything that you've ever had in your relationship where you've looked back and thought, I've done that wrong, or felt you've had to apologise for anything? And I mean, I know that might seem certainly a high protocol. Doms might think that an impertinent question, but it's not meant as one.
No, I think, I think we all get, doesn't matter who we are, we get things wrong. And I think it's important in any relationship to be able to reflect on things and go, do you know what? I didn't do that quite right. Maybe next time I'll do it differently. And I think it's even more so, the importance of that is even greater when you kind of bring BDSM power dynamics into the relationship. So I would, the thought of somebody just because they call themselves a dom not being able to do that doesn't sit comfortably with me. I think it's even more important to be able to do that if you're the one that's going to take some responsibility for making decisions for somebody else. Then if you're not able to go, I got that wrong, or I could do that better next time, then I find for me that quite concerning. But what things have I done? I think there's things, so within my relationship, I think there's things that I've wanted to do that I've felt would be really beneficial, and they've not worked for us, and I've reflected on them. That I think when we were agreeing our contract, there was something quite specific within that I wanted for a particular reason. My partner wasn't so keen on it. It wasn't a red flag or limit or anything like that, but he wasn't quite so keen on it, but we kind of went with it. And actually, after a period of time, I was able to reflect. And I think what I felt that would achieve, it didn't achieve. I was able to achieve that in a different way. So I say very quickly, but after a few weeks, I kind of went back and said, actually, you know, that I don't need that. That isn't, it's not having the desired outcome. It's not working. So there's been things like that, where there's things that I've wanted or I've wanted to try that haven't worked out the way that I envisaged they would. And, you know, I've gone back and we've changed them or we've removed them. Yeah, I think it's important. I think it's important. I think it's important to be able to go, didn't get that one right.
Do you ever renegotiate or revisit your contract? Or do you have like set periods, or do you just do it ad hoc?
I mean, when we initially set it up, we agreed negotiation periods within that. You know, for us, we're in a different phase of that at the moment. But yes, I would encourage, I think it's really important for people who have contracts to revisit them and renegotiate them, you know, at least like every 6 months. I think too frequently, I don't think that's great. But yes, 100%, I would encourage people every 6 months to revisit that. And I just think it really reminds you of where you're at and why you do some of the things that you do. I think it's a nice thing to do, in the same way it might be someone renewing their wedding vows or something. I think it's a nice thing to do. And like we said, things change. The people were a year ago, or things that we liked a couple of years ago, they change over time. So I think contract needs to change to reflect those things.
Thank you. That's very interesting. So, MissGold, do you have any final thoughts for us on Femdom?
Final thoughts on Femdom. Have fun. Overall, it needs to be fun. If you find yourself in a situation where maintaining kind of the lifestyle, so to speak, becomes more stressful and more hassle than you're getting fulfillment and fun out of it, then it's definitely time to change things. And like we said, be true to yourself. One size doesn't fit all. There's many different ways about navigating femdom and relationships and play, and don't get too caught up in some of the bullshit that's out there. Be yourself. Don't try and subscribe to what other people suggest that you should be. Be yourself and enjoy and have fun.
And remember that people aren't vending machines.
Do you know, I was at a well-known femdom club recently, and I was there for the evening with my partner, my submissive, had a collar on, had a lead on, we were together all night walking around, and this guy came over to me and he was like, "Can I buy you a drink?" And I was like, "No, thank you." I mean, I felt like saying yes and asking for a really nice drink and then telling him to do one, but I just said no. And then he came over again and he's like, "Can I buy you a drink?" And at this point, I'm sat on like a high chair with my partner at my feet, worshipping my feet, on a collar and a lead, and I'm all sat there. And he comes over while this is going on, offers to buy me a drink, politely said no. And then he's like, "Can it be my turn after his?" I was just like, "Yeah, having a laugh." Yeah.
Unbelievable.
But I have to say, to counter that, my partner was telling me a story. So he went off to the ladies and he was dressed up, and anyone that knows my partner knows that he likes to wear skirts and stockings and little ankle shoes. And I had him in shackles as well, so he's tottering around on these little ankle shoes, like through the nightclub. And apparently, he said he came out of the bathroom and this lady turned round to him and said it'd be really fun to push her over. And he's like, "Why?" And she was being quite boisterous and just being like, "Well, it'd be fun." And he was like, "Well, you'd have to answer to MissGold if you did." And she was just like, "I don't care." So I think it's very easy. I guess the reason why I'm telling that story is because I think it's very easy to kind of be like, yes, women aren't, kink dispensers for submissive guys, and submissive guys need to behave better. And there is an element of truth in that, but it does go both ways. I've seen some shocking behaviours at clubs and events from females as well. So, and I just think it's really important to recognise. It happens on both sides sometimes as well.
Don't be a prick is the message there,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yes, indeed.
It is time for the encyclopedia of unusual sexual practices once again. And we're starting off with a kind of obvious one this time. Any guesses on kleptophilia?
Is that sexual gratification from stealing things or having things stolen?
Yeah, well, klep is to steal or hide. So to steal or hide. So kleptophilia is, philia being attachment to the act of becoming sexually aroused by stealing objects. This differs somewhat from a kleptomaniac who usually has an uncontrollable urge to steal items they don't need. So, it's different to kleptomania because you might not get any real gratification from it, but you have that urge just to steal. Whereas kleptophilia, you may not have an addiction, but when it does take place, you are aroused by it. I suppose if you're going to do kleptophilia roleplay, what would you do? Just leave your wallet laying around and and tell your partner that they can sort of lift it and tuck it away at some point.
Some kind of cops and robbers situation. Well,
Yeah.
We pair quite well with interrogation play, I suppose.
You catch somebody stealing something and then you take them down the old nick
Aye.
and roleplay the
Aye.
interrogation.
I mean, you could even put them in a cage, get the whole DS Femdom connection in there. Why not? The whole shebang.
Okay then. Here's a harder one for you both. MissGold, any guesses on klismophilia?
Oh, klismophilia.
I can
No.
spell it. I can spell it if you want it.
Go on then.
KLISMA philia. Klismophilia. No?
No.
Burns?
I know, because I cheated, because I looked this one up.
Oh, you dirty
It's-
dog. Go on then, you tell us.
I sent it to you.
Oh, is it?
Enemas, sexual excitement from enemas.
Enemas.
Aye.
Brilliant.
Well, brilliant if you enjoy it. But it also then goes on to include golden enemas, if you'd like to hazard a guess at what a golden enema is.
I mean, has it got anything to do with urine?
Unfortunately, it does, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Miss Gold. Kokigami. It's about Koki gami. Kokigami.
I have no idea. Is it something to do with bending penises?
Close enough.
Yeah, you get half a point for that. If we were doing points, which we're not, you'd
I'd
get half a point.
point.
You get half a point, yeah. Kokigami. The koki is a cloth worn around the waist by Japanese actors used as a prop, gami, paper, and the art of wrapping the penis in a paper costume. The 8th century Japanese aristocrats practiced this,
Excellent.
so I've got this sort of 8th century aristocrats, so I've got this kind of very old and sort of oriental sort of aristocrat, kind of very, stiff upper lip, formal situation in my mind where they've all got their cocks wrapped.
Wrapped in paper.
Again, this sounds like it'd pair quite well with the femdom stuff, because you could have that as like a parade for which sub has the best one.
Well, you say that actually, because it goes on. It involves also silk ribbons and intricate designs that could include dragons, and there's jewels. There were competitions, treasures, trophies. There's some really weird quotes on here about burning tongues and dark caves, fingers curled like claws. Yeah, they're quite elaborate.
One of my favourite things to do on a rainy Sunday afternoon, I got a box of ribbons and sticky on eyes and pens and stuff, and me and my friends, we would like bind and wrap our partners' penises and stick feathers and make
Kokigami.
Yeah, never knew it had a name.
Well, there you go. You've been practicing this ancient Japanese tradition for years without even realising. Thank you for carrying it on.
Need to keep it going, I reckon.
Lactophilia. It's a bit obvious.
Well, that involves milk, surely.
Yeah, well, my actions did my sort of
Is
actions.
it like breastfeeding?
Yeah, it is. It's arousal from lactating, essentially. But there is all sorts. I'll tell you what, we're going to skip L because there wasn't any in L, and there was a couple that I really liked in N. If you want a couple from N, I'll give you nasophilia. Come on, nasophilia.
I mean, it sounds like noses.
Nasophilia, naso for nose, philia for attachments too, refers to the arousal from the sight, touch, or act of licking, sucking a partner's nose. The reason people are enamored with this activity varies. Nasolingus.
Would that be like two people doing their nose things together?
Maybe licking the
nasolingus.
inside of a nose.
No, yeah, exactly. That's the one, mate. It's getting your tongue up inside there and really having a root around and enjoying it. Sorry, we've lowered the tone. But right, necrophilia's on here, but I thought we'd skip that, right? Because there was another one.
It just reminds me of the old joke. My friend told me it was in the sadism, necrophilia and bestiality, but I told him he was flogging a dead horse.
They're not getting any better, these jokes.
No, they're not. I never said they would.
Do you want a really dark one? Do you want a really dark one? Like darker than necrophilia?
Oh God, what's that going to be then?
Nosophilia.
Sorry?
N-O-S-O. Nosophilia. N-O-S-O. Nosophilia. Nosophilia refers to those who are aroused from the knowledge that their partner is terminally ill.
Oh, God.
That's dark. That's dark, isn't
not
it?
Pleasant.
That's fucking dark.
I watched this, it's not quite as bad as that. I watched this film, I can't remember the name of it. It's a comedy set in Australia. And it's kink and BDSM related, and it goes off on these stories about different couples and their relationships. And there was one of the storylines is this lady's with this partner, and sex was really boring, as she never used to come, and she'd just be lying there thinking of England. And then he came home one day and he was upset about something and he was crying. And then all of a sudden she was really horny and was jumping him and having sex. And then she set about her mission to cause him to be upset and to cry, so she'd get aroused. And it's quite funny, some of the lengths that she went to in terms of making him cry so she could get turned on and shag him was quite interesting.
Well, after nosophilia, I think I need to end on normophilia. I think I need normophilia to reset after nosophilia.
Having sex with normal people.
Spot on, pretty much. Normophilia, coined by John Money, is a condition of being in sexual conformity with the standard as directed by customary religious and legal authority. So compared to nosophilia, I think I would take normophilia any day. Let's lighten it up a bit. Burns, have you got a Jock-O-Naughty?
I have. So
oh yes, give it to me.
We have, for this episode of the podcast, we have the 1997 winner of the Bad Sex and Fiction Awards, Nicholas Royal, with an excerpt from The Matter of the Heart. But Ambrose banished the thought and reached for a condom. Yasmin grinned and writhed on the bed, arching her back, making a noise somewhere between a beached seal and a police siren. And then he was there, slowly at first, dead slow. She liked that. He knew. Then speeding up gradually to gain a rhythm until he was punching smoothly in and out of her like a sewing machine. Her noises increased in volume until she was producing a throaty ululation. I mean, it's not terribly erotic, is it? Punching in and out of her like a sewing machine. I mean, a noise somewhere between a beached seal and a police siren. Words fail me.
Throaty undulation tipped me over the edge.
Just, yeah, throaty. I mean, it's, yeah. Throaty makes me think of Hall's Soothers adverts.
Have you ever had anyone suck you off after having a menthol? Or indeed go down on you, MissGold?
I mean, toothpaste after brushing your teeth. Because it's tingly. Have you ever had Tiger Balm on the end of your penis?
I've had it so close to my dick that the whole region felt like it was on fire, but I don't think it really made direct contact
So you
because
haven't
I didn't see God or the devil, so I don't think it could have made direct contact.
So you haven't had it rubbed down the ends of your Japsai and...
I can't think of a single reason why I would allow that to happen ever.
I mean, for some, I guess coming back to the toothpaste question, I know some people that they wouldn't like that's too over stimulating and tingly, whereas for other people, it's quite nice.
Yeah. And just because I wouldn't like Tiger Balm smeared around the tip, and just because it puts the fear in me, other people I'm sure would be really up for that and incredibly aroused to that, just like there are people I play with who enjoy torture and various extreme stimulation.
It's bold of you to admit one of your weaknesses there.
Yeah, no, Tiger Balm, mate. You don't mess with Tiger Balm. You do not mess with Tiger Balm. It's serious stuff. So, thank you for joining us, MissGold. It has been absolutely wonderful having you on the show and sharing a little bit of your world with us and with the listeners. And, hopefully it's given some people some really interesting stuff to think about, and maybe some people that are looking to explore Femdom for the first time, that bit of inspiration to sort of dive in and look for those resources and look for that network.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great. It's been really lovely chatting with you both, and being able to talk about one of my favourite topics, Femdom.
It's great. Thank you. And I think we've barely scratched the surface, to be honest.
Well, like you always say, Burns, there's no harm in having, MissGold, you're welcome to come back anytime and catch up with us. Guests are always welcome back on. It's always great to hear what's going on in your lives and your wider community's lives and the scene in general. So thank you once again. And I think we can pretty much leave it there.
Right.